So here we are, sharing secrets of the soil with me, your host, Regen Ray. Hey there, soil lovers, and welcome to another episode of Secrets of the Soil. I'm your host, Regen Ray, and today we're not having a guest. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, a little bit wild, a little bit crazy. But over the last couple of weeks, I have been putting together a very special guide to help you better understand what you can do with soil in order to supercharge it and also save our planet at the same time. So if you've been a keen listener, you may have noticed these little links appearing around the descriptions, and the guide is called The 7 Ways to Supercharge Your Soil and Save the Planet. And so today I'm going to have a conversation and go through that guide. So not only can you get a PDF version that if you're following along for the video version of our podcast, you'll see me holding it up right now on the screen. It is this amazing little infographic type of PDF that you can download. And in order for you to download, if I've already whet your appetite and you want to get a copy of this PDF, all you need to do is go to secretsofthesoil.com/guide. That's right, that's secretsofthesoil.com/guide. Pop in your details and I will send it to you right away. Well, the interwebs will. It will be all done magically behind the scenes. But what I wanted to do is unpack this document and go a little bit deeper into all the different elements. And so without further ado, let's just dig into it and go through the 7 ways that you can supercharge your soil. And I'll unpack that, and I really open up ideas and conversations. If this is on YouTube and you're watching the video version, hit up the comments down below and share some of the things that you think we should add to this or expand on, and grow this document organically. See what I did there? Anyway, so you're probably going to see a bit more of the geekier side of me when I don't have a guest on the other end. And my aim is to keep this under 20 minutes. So these are little quick bite episodes where it's just you and I hanging out and geeking out about soil. So the first one is to power up with organic matter. And so organic matter is really the top part of the soil that everyone is always looking at when it comes to how healthy your soil is. So the organic matter is basically when you do soil tests, that is the part of the soil that people are really wanting to test and understand what is going on in that organic matter in your soil. But what you can do in order to increase that organic matter is a couple of these other things that we're going to talk about, but you can really think about adding compost onto your soil. And so that can be done in a lot of different ways. Now, one of the most common practice things we see in the farming world is that a liquid fertilizer or organic fertilizer will be put on, whether that's sprayed on or whether it is inoculated on the seeds. It is all going to have a very beneficial outcome. So the benefit of inoculating seeds with an organic matter, or what they sometimes call a biostimulant, is that you really are going to give that plant that kick that it needs from the second it shoots a root. And that means it is going to be inoculated with all this biome and bacteria and fungi and everything that's really magical to give that seed the best life. And so the way that works is that when the seed is grown in really good soil or with an inoculant on it, or this can be as simple as having a bucket of seeds, tipping in the input, mixing it around and then seeding it, or it could be that as you're seeding it, you're dripping this along the seed line as well. There's many different ways of achieving this. You can do a spray after you seed. So, it doesn't matter what type of gardening you're doing, whether it's in your own backyard or whether it's at commercial level, or you've got, hectares and hectares of land with machinery doing the work for you. Finding a way of putting organic matter onto your property is a really good start. Now, some people will run their own compost heaps. I've seen some really impressive, windrows of compost with special turning machines that would run down the windrow and do all the turning for, say, more of a hot compost. But then you can do other things like, doing just a compost and then putting it into some water and brewing it and creating like a tea, and a compost tea. You've got worm farms and you can collect the worm juice and spray that around, all that type of stuff that is going to nurture. The other great thing is to just have herding animals that kind of, they are composters on feet. and they go around and eat the grass and turn that into compost and put it back onto the soil. And then the organic matter starts breaking down, and all those things will really help. This is why a lot of regenerative farmers are moving into a more animal and grazing and cropping kind of system, where the animals will graze down the land and do the composting, and then when it's ready to sow the seeds, they'll just sow the seeds, direct drill straight over the top of that, and then the new produce will come through on that. So that's number one. Number two is to chill out with low till. So many people love tilling, and there's been a lot of information about why disturbing the soil to some degree is important. But what we've found over the decades is that the disturbed soil that is baking in the sun, that is evaporating the water that we're trying to keep in there, is killing all the microorganisms in that top level, which is your most kind of fertile part of the soil, is showing that it is not doing as much good than what the benefits are of, saying, removing the weeds, and this whole weed mentality, and I do that with air quotes, is each plant has a function. And so tilling the soil to remove those plants is just delaying what those plants are trying to do naturally and organically, and with the use of nature and no human intervention. So, just see ways that you can relax with the amount of tilling that you do. No tilling, kind of helps maintain soil structure and prevents soil erosion. Nothing like tilling a paddock and then it rains and all that topsoil is basically washing down into the waterways. And that's the most, as I said before, the topsoil is where it's all fertile. So doing that, baking it in the sun, and there's even videos and photos of people who get a thermometer, a digital thermometer, and they'll have like really bushy grass area, cut down mowed grass, and then bare soil. And you just move the thermometer into those different areas, and there is a massive difference in the amount of temperature that is bouncing off those areas. So, if we're trying to keep water and moisture, then avoiding tilling and bringing it back to bare soil and reducing the amount of disturbance that we're creating on the soil, then that is a big plus, because in the soil there are all these pathways that are getting created with the mycelium network and the fungi and the bacteria. And every time we disturb that with a tilling type of mechanism, even digging holes to put plants in and all that, we are delaying and disturbing that amazing ecosystem that is existing, and it thrives and gets better and better each season and each year. So the least we can disturb it, and if we can chill out with no tilling, then that will help in the long run. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some times where we just need to till the soil and we need to help aerate it, and the right thing and the right tool at the right time is what I say. Then we're going to get jiggy with cover crops. So this is number 3, get jiggy with cover crops. I wanted these to be a little bit more fun than the old boring stuff that people always put out and read. And I wanted to kind of give these a bit of a new facelift so people can kind of see that, cover crops are fun. They are something that you can kind of get jiggy with, and you can cover crop rocks, when we can cover our bare soils with green leaves that are capturing the sun's energy and helping the carbohydrates grow in the soil, and that exchange with all the critters under the ground, then that is really nature doing all the work that you would normally do. So start thinking about what you can heal your soil with by putting a cover crop. There are some plants that will help improve the nitrogen. There are some plants that will help reduce the nitrogen if you've got soils that are rich in nitrogen. There are some plants that will help repair calcium and other minerals that are maybe lacking in your soil. And the great thing is that you can mix these seeds together and have what they call a mixed cover crop or mixed species cover crop. And so you can really look at your soil tests and start realizing what is your soil lacking, what is it in excess of, and how can you use plants and a cover crop to help with fixing the mineral imbalances, but also prevent erosion, because roots holding soil together means that it won't get washed away. It's also photosynthesizing, which means that there is a communication and an energy change from the sun to the plant leaves and into the soil biology, helping that biology in the soil get bigger and better and more resilient as the years go on. And so that's why the no tilling from the step before is a big problem if we start undoing all that good stuff. The other thing is that you get free dew every morning. So when there is a bit of a cold temperature change and there is, moisture on top of all the grass blades, that free dew that your cover crops are now capturing drips down into the soil and means that your soil is staying more hydrated and wetter for the growing season. So then you're not waiting for that magical rain event. Maybe your soils are already got enough water in them. Then we move on to our next step, which is mix it up with crop rotation. So there's always, people know that they need to change what's growing in each paddock, and doing the same thing in the same paddock every year is just going to deplete the same minerals, and there's going to be no repair, and even resting paddocks can be really, really beneficial. But moving things around, rotating which paddocks to graze in, have a plan on your farm or even in your home garden beds, and know that, we grew corn here last year, we put beans over here, and try and mix it around. Let different things grow every year. And there are, lots of different methods where you can have raised garden beds if that's what you're doing, but you always leave one garden bed empty as a bit of an emergency in case something happens to one of the other beds and you need to move things. But you're also letting it rest, and you're letting it maybe heal, where you cover it with mulch, or you use a cover crop to rest it. But that paddocks or that plot is not made for yielding any vegetation that year. But even integrating animals, having different biodiversity of pests and, I say pests, but different bugs, then that reduces the pests, because a lot of bugs are beneficial. And this is why, herbicides and basically anything that ends in "side" is to kill. So, all these pesticides and herbicides and everything that we're putting on our paddocks, not only is it growing the bugs that are above that we think are pests, but they're also killing the biology in the soil, because they are also living. And then when that bug is no longer existent, then the next bug becomes more dominant. And then we kill that, and then the next bug becomes more dominant. So if you let that reverse, there's normally a bug or a pest or an animal that deals with the problem ahead of it. So if we allow that succession or that hierarchy of the natural wildlife do its thing, then every animal takes care of itself, and they create an equilibrium, which means a equal amount of bugs and pests that are all controllable and manageable. And that can definitely help with rotating crops around, so that way a particular paddock doesn't become sterile and prone to disease and so forth. So, growing the same thing in the same paddock over and over and over means that you will eventually create some issues, and they might be decades down the track. And this is what's kind of happened now, is farmers who have been growing for many, many years through this kind of industrial, let's put things on, or inputs or chemicals or synthetics or whatever, have realized that now that runway is maybe running out, and it's time to start doing things a bit differently. The next one, number 5, is to party with companion planting. That's right, it's a plant party time, and really start understanding what plants can be planted together. A big way that you can get a good understanding of this is following what they do in the permaculture movement, and also syntropic farming. So a lot of plants work really well when they're grown in companion with each other. There's sometimes this mentality in the growing world that a plant next to another plant, they're competing. And maybe this comes from, humans playing sports and school doing tests, and we're all kind of competing with each other. But plants work very differently. And yes, there are some plants that will compete and they'll take each other's water, and that could be a bad thing. But when it is balanced, you'll find that plants that are meant to be grown together, and if you Google companion planting charts, you'll find all these things where it says, okay, basil and tomato can be planted next to each other. One gives this, one takes that, one creates a repellent from this pest. So that's how you better understand what can be planted together. And in syntropic farming, they grow rows and rows of these plants that are all working together, maybe yielding at different times of the year. So one plant is not creating shadow of the next plant. And when that's yielded, the leaves drop, and that creates mulch for the next plant that's growing the next season. There's normally timber and big trees also integrated into those growing plans. So it's really understanding and zooming out that there are many parts to the whole. And unfortunately, in the farming system, we've just cleared all the trees and created what they call farmable land. And farmable land is basically just land that banks will give money towards because it's cleared, and you can run cattle, tractors, and plants through it very easily. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's more beneficial farmable land. And that's what we're starting to reverse now by putting a lot of the vegetation back in there and understanding this whole new movement of natural capital, that the natural capital is more valuable than cleared land with no trees and a fence creating a boundary. So companion planting is the next thing that I wanted to talk about, and we've just done that. So let's move on to number 6, and it's to go with natural fertilizers. Go natural with fertilizers is the thing, and it's like ditch the synthetic stuff. There are so many inputs that you can put now. I'm surprised they haven't got synthetic water, and maybe they do, but there are so many factory manufactured inputs in the growing world, and it's, each one has its own specialty. And you put this on for that one, and you speak to the consultant, they say, oh, you need to put more on, and then you need more on, and then you need more on. And there's a little joke in the community now that if you're just one of those farmers that keep putting more on every season, then maybe you're a bit of a moron farmer. And that is a system, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Something's got to give. COVID and the lack of fertilizers availability and the cost of diesel really shook a lot of the industry up, and has created people to think, how can I go a little bit more natural? And like I spoke about with the organic matter one, there are so many natural products available now that are so close to nature, that are created by nature, for nature. And so why wouldn't we use something that's more closer to home? And that's why I love farmers who make their own compost heaps, because you really get to decay the local biology of that landscape, whether it be a fallen down tree, branches, organic waste from localized biology that is then going into compost to then inoculate and to increase the biodiversity of the next generation of plants and produce. And so with all that, keeping it local and understanding that, the more local we can keep this, the biology and the kind of the fingerprint of that ecosystem, it doesn't seem like a shock. Sometimes when we maybe buy something from a very far away, maybe another country, and it comes flown over and shipped over, and then we put it on our paddocks, the paddock actually goes into a shock initially, because it's like, oh, I don't understand the fingerprint of what I'm seeing here. And now it's going through this learning curve of trying to work out, is this good? Is it bad? Is it a pathogen? Is it friend? Is it foe? And so in order to avoid all that kind of confusion, keeping things local and as close to home as possible means that the adoption rate of that is going to be much quicker and better. And there are so many people who, maybe follow biodynamics and they use like a Prep 500, or there's people who do permaculture and they have their own compost worm and then they're brewing their own compost tea. They put it on the paddock or they put it on their garden bed, and within the days or 24 hours, you can noticeably see the difference. And, because it's so close and already trained, the plants go, oh, I know this good thing, absorb, make magic happen. So that's number 6, is go natural with your fertilizers. Every single thing that has a synthetic version of it would have had a natural one. And one of the other big spaces where this is really big is in our own health when we take in vitamins. A lot of the vitamins we take are synthetic or an equivalent to it. It's not its natural source. Now, I don't know about you, but you don't really need to think about it too much, but anything natural and closer to its natural source is going to be absorbed much better, and without it maybe being seen as a foreign object or foreign something into the body. So I know a lot of tests get done into like synthetic and equivalents of minerals, but I think there's nothing that beats the natural source, and we don't need to debate about that too much because it seems a little bit like common sense. And number 7, which is the most important, and I didn't put it at number 1 because I wanted everyone to read to the end of my guide, and that is to embrace the regenerative mindset. You may have heard from guests in the podcast in the past that it is the paddock between your ears, and that is your brain that really matters. If you can change the paradigms that you see the world in, if you look at a paddock or a garden or a landscape and you can really change the way that you understand what I call the literacy of the landscape, the same way as we read and do mathematics and we learn the formulas and the methods, and we can look at a word and know that those sounds make a particular word, then we can look at a landscape and go, this landscape has no succession for future. This landscape is monocultured. This landscape is begging for some moisture. Is it brittle? Is it humid? Is it needing something that I, as a steward of the land, can do and help encourage in its most natural state? And so, the mindset goes beyond productivity, it goes beyond yield, it goes beyond profit. It is, are we doing the best for the soil? And a lot of farmers now starting to call themselves soil stewards and people who are looking after soil, because they realize that if you look after soil, it will look after the plants or the grasses and the plants and the grasses will either look after the humans or the animals grazing on that, and then the animals will then bring back biodiversity, or we get to eat some of those animals and they're grown in environments that are nutrient rich and full of, a good mix of biodiversity. And then we get to consume that, and then it goes into our gut, and that increases our gut biome. And then the links between our gut biome and our mental health pathways that are being researched now, again, brings us back to that mindset. So there is this loop that if we can see the world in a different way and in a more regenerative way, then we can make better decisions, grow better quality food, consume better foods, increase our gut biome, which then in turn helps with our mental health state. And so there is that beautiful circle of that closed circular economy where if we look at the world from a more regenerative way, then we start looking after our planet in a better way, our other humans in a better way, and we can regenerate the earth and, not just for today, but for generations to come. So mindset is probably the number one pillar, and the one thing that I've always spoken about when I've been in this space is that we really need to change the way that we think, the way that we see the world, so then that way we can make better decisions in the way that we treat and heal the planet. So on that note, exactly on about 20 minutes for this episode, so I couldn't have timed it any better, I wanted to remind you that there are heaps of conversations that go deep and deep and deep into all these topics on the podcast. So if you're a new listener or you've joined only a little while ago, for over a year and a half now, I've been making episodes and talking to thought leaders from all around the world about soil. And so the Secrets of the Soil podcast has just recently hit 50,000 plus listeners, and I'm absolutely stoked. And one of the reasons and one of the milestones that I said when I get to that 50K mark, I'll start doing solo shows. And once we get to the 100K mark, there'll be another maybe shift or change or surprise that I will plan closer to that date because I haven't thought of it yet. But the podcast has really been an amazing way for me to hang out with awesome thought leaders from all around the world, but then also more importantly, attract amazing soil lovers like yourself to listen to the episodes, write reviews, send in emails when you absolutely loved a guest or told me that you want more guests like this. We've tried to really cover a range of different topics. So if you haven't done yourself a favor, go back in the back catalog and listen to all the episodes all the way from number one. Number one was with Tony Hill talking about ecological verification outcomes, EOV, or ecological outcome verification program. And he talks about so many of the principles that they look at as assessors on the paddocks. So that way they can improve the farmers, literacy of the landscape. So that way farmers can walk their paddocks and feel the sponginess difference on the ground, or understand that these plants together are actually doing a particular function. Or a thistle is trying to show that it's compacted and it's got a deep taproot to help with that compaction problem. So when we look at plants and the landscape as a signal to what are you as the landscape trying to say, then our regenerative brain and our regenerative human way of thinking can make better decisions rather than going, weed, I need poison, spray, you are the wrong plant in the wrong spot. But instead we say, what are you trying to tell me? Oh, you're signaling to me that there's something wrong below the ground, and I'm going to allow you to do your job. And in fact, I'm going to plant more to help you solve that problem quicker. Well, on that note, if you haven't got the guide already, remember that you can go to secretsofthesoil.com/guide. And if you're watching the video one, I'm holding it up on the screen, but that is a PDF guide that you can get straight into your inbox, and you can print it out or you can save it on your desktop and you can look at it and think about how you can make more topics on these areas come to life. Remember, the podcast is open sourced and I do this as a gift to the planet. None of this is my work. It's all not copyrighted. It is yours to tweak it however you like. So grab that guide, share it around, in the comments on YouTube, share with me other things you think should be on the guide. Maybe I can come out with a version 2. But on that note, until next time, make sure that you get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into the wonderful world of soil. I'm Regen Ray, and I'll catch you on the next show. Well, soil lovers, that's enough secrets for one episode. I really hope that you enjoyed all the secrets shared during this conversation. But hey, let's not keep it a secret. Please share this podcast around and make sure that you like it and leave us a review, because that really helps spread the secrets of the soil. Until next time, remember, get Get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into your soils.